The young pianist stood in the quiet room, her fingers hovering just above the keys of the grand piano. Every note she had played in her life seemed to echo in her mind, like a gentle reminder of the long hours she had spent practicing, of the early mornings and late nights, of the sacrifices she had made. She could feel the weight of anticipation pressing on her chest. Today was not just any day. Today she would perform in front of the world-famous maestro, a figure who had inspired her from the very first time she had listened to one of his performances. The thought alone made her heart race and her hands sweat. The hall outside was buzzing with activity. Cameras were being adjusted, lights were being focused, and stagehands hurried from one side to the other. The audience was slowly taking their seats, filling the massive hall with a low hum of conversation. Reporters and photographers moved carefully, trying not to disturb the flow of the performers preparing backstage. The young pianist could hear snippets of conversation, words like, "amazing talent," and "she's very young," drifting through the air. It was overwhelming, yet exciting. She had dreamed of this moment for years, and now it was finally here. Backstage, she took a deep breath, trying to steady her nerves. She looked at the music sheet in front of her, the notes she had memorized countless times. Each page was a memory of her practice, each note a step toward this very moment. She remembered the day she had first touched the piano, the way the sound had made her heart leap, the way her fingers had struggled to find the right keys. Over the years, the struggle had turned into skill, and skill had turned into something beautiful. But no matter how many times she played, the thought of performing in front of the maestro was terrifying. She was guided to the stage by a kind assistant who whispered words of encouragement. "You're ready. Just play like you always do." She nodded, trying to absorb the reassurance, but her stomach twisted with nerves. As she stepped onto the stage, the bright lights blinded her for a moment. The audience seemed endless, stretching far beyond what her eyes could reach. She felt small, almost invisible, yet determined. This was her moment, and she would not let fear take it away. The maestro sat in the front row, his presence commanding yet calm. He was a man whose reputation had traveled across continents, whose opinion could shape the careers of young musicians. The pianist could feel his gaze on her, intense and assessing. For a moment, she doubted herself. Could she live up to the expectations? Could she make him see the music in her fingers, the passion in her soul? She closed her eyes for a second, reminding herself why she was here. She loved the piano, not for fame or applause, but because it spoke to her heart. That thought grounded her. The music began, soft and hesitant at first. Her fingers moved carefully, finding their way through the familiar patterns. The notes floated into the hall, gentle and clear, filling the space with a melody that had been a part of her life for as long as she could remember. She felt herself relax a little as the music took over, her body moving with the rhythm, her mind becoming one with the piano. The audience was quiet, listening intently, and she could sense the anticipation in the room. As she played, she remembered the countless times she had imagined this moment. She had dreamed of performing on a grand stage, of feeling the lights on her, of sharing her music with the world. She had pictured the maestro smiling, nodding in approval, perhaps even applauding her talent. But reality was different. The tension in the air was palpable, and she knew that one wrong note could shatter the delicate balance she had created. Still, she played on, each note a testament to her dedication and love for music. Her mind wandered briefly to her family, who had supported her through everything. They had believed in her when she doubted herself, had encouraged her when practice seemed endless, and had celebrated every small victory along the way. She could almost feel their presence in the room, their silent encouragement giving her strength. She imagined their smiles, their proud eyes watching her from the audience, and it gave her a surge of confidence. The piece grew more complex, demanding every ounce of concentration and skill she had. Her fingers flew across the keys, moving with precision and emotion. She felt the music flowing through her, each note a story, each chord a feeling. The audience was captivated, their eyes fixed on her, sensing the depth of her performance. The maestro remained still, his expression unreadable, and that only added to her tension. She knew he was listening carefully, evaluating every detail, and the pressure was immense. Despite the nerves, she found a rhythm within herself. The music became a conversation between her and the piano, a language only she could speak. She lost track of time, lost in the melody, in the flow of sound that had carried her through years of practice and perseverance. The hall seemed to disappear around her, leaving only her and the music, intertwined and inseparable. Every note she played was an expression of her journey, her struggles, and her triumphs. As the final notes approached, her heart pounded in her chest. The climax of the piece demanded everything she had, every bit of skill, emotion, and courage. She played with all her heart, letting the music soar, filling the room with a sense of completion and beauty. When the last note lingered and faded into silence, she sat still for a moment, letting the sound settle, letting herself breathe. The audience was silent, hanging on the edge of their seats, waiting for the reaction that would follow. She opened her eyes slowly, glancing at the maestro. His face was difficult to read, a mix of thoughtfulness and something she could not quite place. She had no idea how he had received her performance. The room remained quiet, the tension thick, and she felt a wave of both relief and anxiety wash over her. She had given everything she had, and now it was out of her hands. She could only hope that the music had spoken as she intended, that it had conveyed the passion and dedication that she had poured into it. Stepping back from the piano, she felt a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. The adrenaline from performing, the intensity of the moment, and the weight of expectation had left her both drained and alive. She knew that no matter what happened next, she had faced her fear and shared her music with the world. The applause, if it came, would be a recognition of her effort, but she realized that the true reward was in the performance itself, in the connection she had felt with the music and with herself. As she left the stage to a small round of polite applause, she felt a strange mix of emotions. Pride, relief, fear, and hope all mingled together inside her. She knew that this was only the beginning, that the next moments could bring either validation or challenge. But she also knew that she had proven something important to herself, that her dedication and love for music could carry her through even the most intimidating situations. The journey was far from over, and the true test of her talent and courage was yet to come. The applause was polite but brief, a soft echo that lingered in the large hall. The young pianist stepped back from the piano, her fingers still tingling from the intensity of her performance. She had given everything she had, and for a moment, she allowed herself to breathe. But the relief was short-lived. From the front row, the maestro leaned forward slightly, his expression a mix of curiosity and criticism. The audience seemed to sense a shift in energy, the way the air felt heavier, as if something unexpected was about to happen. "That was interesting," the maestro said, his voice calm but edged with subtle disapproval. The words cut through the excitement in the hall like a sudden gust of cold wind. He gestured vaguely at the piano, his hand flicking almost dismissively. "But you must understand, technique is everything. Expression is meaningless if your fingers cannot keep up with your ideas." The young pianist froze for a second, her mind struggling to process the words. She had imagined praise, encouragement, even a nod of approval from the maestro, but not this. Not this cool dismissal that made her feel small in front of the entire audience. Her heart sank, and a cold wave of embarrassment spread across her face. She could feel her stomach twist, the nervous energy from before transforming into a tight, uneasy knot. The audience murmured, the sound like whispers of uncertainty bouncing off the walls. Some faces looked shocked, others sympathetic, and a few even nodded in agreement with the maestro, as though they had expected such critique from a figure of his reputation. The young pianist tried to steady herself, her hands twitching slightly at her sides. She had faced nerves before, but this was different. This was public, immediate, and harsh. Every person in the hall seemed to be watching her reaction, waiting to see how she would handle it. She swallowed hard, trying to find her voice. I understand," she said quietly, almost to herself. Her words were barely audible over the low hum of the audience, but she hoped they were enough to show she was listening, that she was taking the feedback seriously. Inside, however, a fire began to spark, a quiet determination that pushed against the embarrassment and fear. She had not come this far to let a few critical words define her. The maestro continued, leaning back in his chair and crossing his arms. You have spirit, I can see that, but spirit alone does not make a musician. You need precision, control, and awareness of your instrument. That's what separates the talented from the truly exceptional. His tone was firm, almost unforgiving. There was no malice, but there was an undeniable authority in his words that made the young pianist feel exposed, as though he were weighing her soul alongside her skill. Backstage, the pianist tried to collect her thoughts. She paced quietly, her shoes tapping against the floor, each step echoing her inner turmoil. The words of the maestro replayed in her mind over and over, gnawing at her confidence. She could feel the sting of humiliation, the weight of expectation, and the pressure of proving herself. But beneath that, there was also a flicker of resolve, a quiet voice inside her saying that she was capable, that her talent was real, and that this moment did not define her. She remembered the hours spent at home, practicing until her fingers ached, perfecting every phrase and note. She thought of the sacrifices she had made, the moments of doubt she had pushed through, the encouragement of her family who had never once let her believe that she could not achieve this. The memory of their belief strengthened her, grounding her in the reality that she had worked hard and earned the right to be on this stage. As the young pianist returned to the stage for the next segment of the performance, the room seemed to hold its breath. The audience was curious, waiting to see if she would crumble under the maestro's words or rise above them. She sat at the piano once more, her back straight, her fingers hovering above the keys with renewed determination. She closed her eyes for a moment, centering herself, letting the music that had always been a part of her life flow through her mind before it flowed through her fingers. The next piece began softly, almost cautiously, as if testing the waters. But soon, the young pianist allowed herself to become immersed in the music, letting it take over completely. Her fingers moved with a fluidity and confidence that seemed to surprise even her. The notes were precise, deliberate, each one resonating with clarity and emotion. The hall seemed to transform around her, the lights dimming in her mind as the music became the only thing that mattered. The maestro's eyes widened slightly as he watched her. The subtle skepticism in his expression softened, replaced by curiosity and a hint of admiration. He leaned forward again, this time more attentive, almost as if he were seeing her skill for the first time. Each note she played carried not just technical precision but a story, a depth of feeling that could not be ignored. The audience responded instinctively, leaning in, their attention captivated by the sudden transformation of energy on stage. She felt the music flowing from her heart, through her fingers, into the piano, and out into the room. It was no longer a performance aimed at approval. It was a conversation, a declaration of her passion and determination. She remembered the countless times she had faced doubt, criticism, or failure, and now each note was a defiance, a statement that she would not be silenced or diminished by harsh words. She played with everything she had, letting the music speak louder than any criticism could. The complexity of the piece challenged her, demanding both technical skill and emotional depth. She met the challenge head-on, her fingers moving with precision and grace, her mind fully present in the rhythm and melody. Every mistake she had ever feared seemed to vanish as she focused entirely on the expression of the music. She was no longer just a young pianist. She was a musician in full command of her art, and the audience could feel it. The climax of the performance arrived, powerful and moving, a cascade of notes that seemed to fill every corner of the hall. The young pianist's heart raced, her hands flying across the keys, yet steady and confident. She poured everything into the music. Her fears, her hopes, her long years of dedication, and her belief in herself. The audience erupted into applause even before the final note, moved by the intensity and beauty of what they had witnessed. As the last note faded, the young pianist sat in silence for a heartbeat, letting the sound settle. She opened her eyes and met the gaze of the maestro. This time, his expression was different. The critical edge was gone, replaced by something softer, more reflective. His lips parted slightly, a subtle acknowledgement that he had been wrong to underestimate her. The applause of the audience swelled, filling the room with energy and excitement, and she finally allowed herself to smile, a mixture of relief and quiet triumph. Backstage, she felt a surge of pride and exhilaration. The initial ridicule of the maestro had felt like a heavy burden, but she had turned it into motivation, using it to push herself to perform better than she ever had before. She had faced the moment, faced the criticism, and come out stronger. Her journey was far from over, but this victory, this moment of standing tall in the face of doubt, would stay with her forever. The young pianist had learned that talent alone was not enough. Courage, determination, and belief in oneself were just as essential, and in that realization, she found her true strength. Backstage, the young pianist sat on a small bench, her hands resting on her lap, fingers still tingling from the previous performance. Her heart was racing, a mix of adrenaline and nerves, and her mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. The maestro's words echoed relentlessly, the subtle criticism and the coldness in his tone replaying over and over. She could feel the sting of embarrassment, the sudden doubt creeping in despite all her preparation. Yet somewhere deep inside, beneath the uncertainty, a small spark of determination flickered, refusing to be snuffed out. She closed her eyes, taking a deep breath, trying to calm the storm inside. Memories of long practice sessions, early mornings, and late nights filled her mind. She remembered the moments when her fingers had stumbled and she had refused to give up, when she had felt frustration and fatigue, but had continued to push forward. Each memory was a reminder that she had worked tirelessly to reach this stage, that her love for music was far stronger than any single critique. She repeated to herself quietly, "I can do this. I must do this." The backstage area was busy with performers, assistants, and production staff, but she felt in her own world. She watched as other participants rehearsed or prepared, their faces reflecting a mixture of excitement and anxiety. Some offered polite smiles or nods as they passed by, acknowledging the tension that hung in the air. She noticed a few young musicians whispering encouragement, their expressions showing admiration for her bravery in facing such a challenge at her age. Their support, though quiet, helped anchor her, reminding her that she was not alone. She took out a small notebook from her bag, flipping to a page where she had written a personal mantra before the performance. "Music speaks when words cannot. Passion is stronger than fear." She read it slowly, letting the words sink in. This was her truth, the foundation she had built her journey upon. She reminded herself that the maestro's critique, though sharp, did not diminish her talent or her passion. It was simply one opinion, and it was her choice whether to let it control her or motivate her. Sitting there, she began to mentally rehearse her next piece. She visualized every note, every hand movement, every rise and fall of the melody. She imagined herself performing with confidence, her fingers gliding effortlessly over the keys, each chord resonating with emotion. The visualization was powerful, almost like living the performance before it happened. Her breathing slowed as she focused entirely on the music, letting her mind enter a calm but determined state. She could almost hear the hall, the applause, the notes filling the space, and it strengthened her resolve. A stage assistant approached quietly, offering gentle encouragement. "Take your time. When you go back on stage, just play from your heart. Everyone is eager to see you shine." The words, simple as they were, made her smile faintly. She nodded, grateful for the support, yet aware that ultimately, the strength had to come from within. The assistant moved on, leaving her alone with her thoughts, and she allowed herself to feel the full weight of the moment. It was intimidating, yes, but it was also an opportunity. She had come here to share her music, and that goal was more important than fear or criticism. The young pianist thought about the maestro, the man who had both inspired and challenged her. She recalled watching videos of his performances, seeing his mastery of the instrument and the passion with which he played. That admiration had fueled her own ambition for years. Now, standing on the cusp of a response, she realized that she did not need to seek his approval to validate her talent. Instead, she needed to prove to herself that she could rise above doubt and deliver her best performance, no matter what anyone else thought. Minutes passed like hours as she continued to focus inward, drawing strength from her experiences. She remembered her family, who had always believed in her, who had cheered her on in every recital, every local competition, every practice session at home. She could picture their faces in the audience, imagining the pride and encouragement in their expressions. That vision gave her courage, reminding her why she had chosen this path, why she had devoted so much of herself to music. The production team signaled that it was almost time for her to return to the stage. She stood slowly, stretching her arms and loosening her shoulders. Each movement was deliberate, a way to release the tension building in her body. She walked toward the stage entrance with careful steps, her mind focused entirely on the music she would play. The lights from the hall seeped through the doorway, bright and overwhelming, but she no longer felt small. She felt ready, grounded, and determined. As she stepped onto the stage again, the audience welcomed her with a quiet anticipation, sensing that something remarkable was about to happen. The maestro's eyes were fixed on her, his expression unreadable, a challenge lingering in his gaze. She did not falter. She took a deep breath, feeling the piano keys under her fingers, letting her fingers find their place as she prepared to let the music flow. She felt her heartbeat slow, replaced by a focused energy that pulsed through her. The first notes were soft, almost hesitant, but deliberate. She allowed herself to settle into the rhythm, to feel the melody as it emerged from her fingers. Each note carried intent, precision, and emotion. She let the music take over, creating a bridge between her passion and the audience's attention. The hall seemed to transform, the tension melting into a shared connection through the piano's voice. She was no longer performing for judgment or approval. She was performing to express, to tell a story that had lived inside her for years. Her confidence grew with each passing measure. She allowed herself to explore the dynamics of the piece, the crescendos and pauses, the subtle shifts in emotion. Her fingers danced across the keys, executing complex passages with clarity and grace. Every gesture was intentional, a reflection of the countless hours of practice and the love she had for the instrument. She felt her soul intertwining with the music, creating a performance that was both technical and heartfelt. The audience, captivated, leaned in as they listened. They could sense the transformation, the young pianist rising above fear and doubt. The maestro, initially reserved and skeptical, began to lean forward, his expression softening. His eyes widened slightly as he followed her fingers, witnessing not just skill but artistry. The realization dawned that the girl before him was not merely talented, but a true musician capable of conveying depth, emotion, and mastery beyond her years. As the piece progressed, she felt the energy in the room responding to her. Every note seemed to resonate with the collective heartbeat of the audience. The music was no longer just sound. It was a living expression of her journey, her struggles, and her triumphs. She poured every ounce of herself into the performance, letting the melody rise and fall with intention, letting the piano speak the words she could not. The connection between her, the instrument, and the listeners was electric, palpable, and unforgettable. In the final moments, the complexity of the music reached its peak. She played with precision, control, and passion, her fingers moving as if guided by instinct. The crescendo built, carrying the weight of her determination and belief in herself. Each chord was deliberate, each pause meaningful. The audience held their breath, caught in the intensity of the moment. The maestro, for the first time, seemed genuinely impressed, his critical demeanor replaced by admiration and awe. As the last note lingered, fading gently into silence, the young pianist sat still for a moment, letting the music settle. The room remained quiet for a heartbeat, then erupted into applause, cheers, and whistles. She allowed herself a small smile, a mixture of relief and pride. She had faced the challenge, confronted the criticism, and found the courage to rise above. Backstage, she knew that this was a turning point, a moment that would stay with her forever, a moment that proved the power of determination, resilience, and belief in oneself. The lights in the hall dimmed slightly as the young pianist took her seat at the grand piano once more. The audience waited in hushed anticipation, sensing that something extraordinary was about to unfold. She adjusted her posture, inhaling slowly and letting her fingers brush lightly over the keys. For a moment, she simply sat, letting the silence of the hall soak into her. Every muscle in her body was ready, every nerve tingling with focus. This was her moment, the one she had been preparing for in her mind and in her heart. The first notes she played were delicate, almost like a whisper, drawing the audience in with their subtle beauty. Her fingers moved with precision, but also with a fluidity that spoke of years of practice and deep passion. Each note was intentional, each pause carefully measured. She was no longer playing to impress or to seek approval. She was playing to express herself, to let the music speak the words her heart had carried for years. The hall seemed to hold its breath, captivated by the quiet intensity of her beginning. As the piece unfolded, the music began to swell, rising and falling like a wave. She allowed herself to feel every emotion embedded in the notes, letting them guide her fingers across the keys. The melody grew richer, deeper, more complex, but never rushed. She maintained control, ensuring that every chord resonated fully, every note told a story. The audience leaned forward in their seats, sensing the transformation on stage, feeling the energy that flowed from her to them. The maestro, sitting in the front row, could no longer maintain his composed detachment. His eyes followed her hands intently, his expression slowly shifting from curiosity to amazement. The subtle lines of critique that had previously etched his face began to soften. He had expected a technical display, perhaps some raw talent, but what he was witnessing now was something more profound. Artistry, maturity, and emotional depth that far exceeded her years. He leaned slightly forward, captivated by the young pianist's ability to communicate through the music. The young pianist's confidence continued to build with each measure. She embraced the challenge of the more demanding passages, her fingers moving with both speed and elegance. The hall was filled with a rich tapestry of sound, the kind that could make hearts race, bring tears, or lift spirits. She could feel the audience responding, their energy feeding back into her performance. The connection was electric, the kind of unspoken understanding between performer and listener that turns a recital into an unforgettable experience. Her thoughts remained focused yet calm. She recalled every hour of practice, every correction from teachers, every moment she had doubted herself but pushed on anyway. Each of those memories gave her strength, reminding her that she was capable of more than she often realized. She felt a quiet pride in what she had achieved, not as a show for recognition, but as a personal triumph over her own fears and limitations. This realization strengthened her resolve, allowing her to pour even more emotion into the performance. Midway through the piece, the music shifted to a softer, more introspective passage. She slowed her tempo slightly, letting each note linger, resonating with warmth and emotion. The audience was spellbound, the silence between notes almost as powerful as the music itself. The maestro's face reflected genuine awe. He watched her with an intensity that spoke of respect and surprise. He had underestimated her, and now he was witnessing her potential unfold in real time. As the performance reached its climax, the young pianist's energy surged. The notes became more complex, demanding every ounce of precision and control. She embraced the challenge, her fingers dancing across the keys with an elegant fluency that seemed almost effortless. The audience was caught in a wave of sound, moving with her as the music rose and fell. Each chord was infused with emotion, each pause a dramatic breath that drew listeners further into the story she was telling through the piano. She played with a combination of technical mastery and emotional depth that left no room for doubt about her talent. The hall was alive with the sound of her music, every listener hanging on every note. The young pianist felt herself becoming one with the instrument, her mind and body perfectly attuned to the flow of the melody. She could see the subtle reactions of the audience, The way they leaned forward, the small gasps, the expressions of admiration, all reinforcing the power of her performance. The maestro, who had been critical moments before, now sat completely absorbed. His hands rested on his knees, his eyes fixed on her fingers, absorbing every nuance. The surprise and admiration on his face were unmistakable. He had been speechless, not in anger or judgment, but in recognition of a rare talent. This young musician, barely a teenager, had transformed a moment of doubt and criticism into a performance that was both technically brilliant and emotionally compelling. As the piece approached its final section, the young pianist allowed herself a quiet smile, knowing she had reached the culmination of her journey in that moment. She played the final chords with grace, allowing the last note to linger and fade naturally. The silence that followed was profound, a shared breath between performer and audience, a moment suspended in time. Then, the applause erupted, powerful and heartfelt, filling the hall with energy and admiration. The young pianist remained seated for a heartbeat longer, letting the applause wash over her, feeling a deep sense of accomplishment and relief. She glanced at the maestro, whose expression had softened into one of genuine respect. He gave a subtle nod, an unspoken acknowledgement of her talent and determination. It was a moment of validation that went beyond words, a recognition that her performance had conveyed what mere critique could not capture. The audience continued to cheer, some rising to their feet, moved by the intensity and beauty of what they had just witnessed. The young pianist finally stood, bowing gracefully, her heart racing yet calm. She had faced criticism, confronted doubt, and emerged stronger and more confident. The journey had been challenging, but the result was a performance that would be remembered, not just for its technical excellence, but for the courage, passion, and artistry it embodied. Backstage, she allowed herself a moment to breathe, feeling a sense of pride and fulfillment that was impossible to describe. The performance had been more than a test of skill. It had been a testament to her resilience and belief in herself. The maestro, now approaching her with a warm smile, extended his hand. "That was remarkable," he said softly. "You have a rare gift. Never let anyone make you doubt it." His words, simple yet powerful, validated not only her talent but her courage in the face of criticism. The young pianist nodded, a smile spreading across her face. She had faced one of the most intimidating figures in her world, turned a moment of ridicule into an opportunity, and proven her skill and spirit. The experience had taught her more than she could have imagined about perseverance, self-belief, and the transformative power of music. As she left the stage, the applause still echoing behind her, she felt a quiet certainty. This was only the beginning of her journey, and no criticism, however harsh, could ever dim the passion that fueled her heart. After leaving the stage, the young pianist walked slowly down the corridor, her ears still ringing from the applause. She felt a strange combination of exhaustion and exhilaration. Every nerve in her body was alive, yet her mind was surprisingly calm. The experience had been overwhelming, but also incredibly rewarding. She had faced criticism, doubt, and the intimidating presence of a world-famous maestro, and yet she had emerged stronger and more confident than ever. Her heart swelled with a quiet pride, not just for the performance itself, but for the courage she had shown in confronting her fears. Backstage, other performers and assistants came forward, offering smiles and words of admiration. "That was incredible," one whispered. "You really turned it around." She nodded politely, smiling in return, but her thoughts were elsewhere. She was thinking about the journey that had led her here, the long hours of practice, the sacrifices, the moments of doubt and perseverance. Every challenge had prepared her for this moment, and now she could see the results of her dedication in the faces of the audience and in the acknowledgement from the maestro himself. The maestro approached, his expression thoughtful yet warm. He extended his hand, a gesture that seemed both formal and personal. "I must admit," he said quietly, "I underestimated you. Your performance just now was exceptional. You have a rare combination of technical skill and emotional depth. Never lose sight of that." The young pianist felt a lump in her throat. The words were more than praise. They were validation, a recognition of the hard work, dedication, and heart she had poured into her music. She nodded, unable to speak for a moment, letting the weight and significance of the moment sink in. She turned to the audience one more time as she left the stage, their faces filled with admiration and awe. Some were clapping vigorously, others stood in quiet appreciation. Social media buzzed instantly with posts, clips, and comments praising her performance. The realization that her story and music had reached beyond the hall filled her with a warm, almost dizzying sense of accomplishment. She had not just performed. She had connected with people in a way that transcended words. Her music had become a voice that spoke directly to the hearts of those who listened. Later, in a quieter room, the young pianist reflected on everything that had happened. She thought about the maestro's initial criticism, the sting it had caused, and the determination it had sparked within her. She realized that the experience had taught her more than any easy praise could have. She had learned the value of resilience, the importance of self-belief, and the power of letting passion and dedication guide her actions. Criticism, she understood now, was not a measure of her worth, but a challenge to grow stronger, more confident, and more precise in her craft. Her family gathered around her afterward, their faces glowing with pride. They had followed her journey closely, supporting her through every challenge, celebrating every small victory. Their embrace and words of encouragement reminded her that talent alone was not enough. Love, support, and belief in oneself were equally important. She felt gratitude for their unwavering support, realizing that their faith in her had carried her through moments of doubt and fear. The young pianist also considered her future. She knew that this performance was not an end, but a beginning. The recognition she had received, the applause, and even the maestro's acknowledgement opened doors to new opportunities. But she understood that the real growth came from continual practice, dedication, and learning. She wanted to explore more challenging pieces, perform for different audiences, and continue developing her unique voice through the piano. Each step would require effort and persistence, but she felt ready to embrace the journey with excitement rather than fear. In the days that followed, the story of her performance spread rapidly. Music enthusiasts, critics, and fellow performers praised her poise, talent, and emotional depth. Interviews and articles highlighted her journey, focusing not just on the performance itself, but on her courage in the face of criticism. She realized that her experience resonated with many people, not because she was flawless, but because she had demonstrated resilience, determination, and the ability to transform a challenging moment into triumph. Her story became an inspiration to young musicians and others striving to pursue their passions despite obstacles. She also reflected on the maestro, whose initial ridicule had pushed her to perform beyond her own expectations. She understood that his harsh words were not personal but a test of character and skill. By responding with courage and excellence, she had not only proven her talent, but also earned his respect. The experience had shown her that even criticism, when approached with the right mindset, could become a powerful motivator. She felt a renewed appreciation for the value of guidance, feedback, and challenge in personal growth. The young pianist continued to practice diligently, inspired by the recent events and eager to explore new musical horizons. She set goals for herself, both short-term and long-term, aiming to refine her technique, expand her repertoire, and deepen her emotional expression. Each practice session was infused with the memory of the performance, the applause, and the acknowledgement that had followed. The experience became a source of motivation, reminding her that dedication and perseverance could turn even the most daunting challenges into opportunities for growth. As time passed, she began performing in various venues, from local recitals to international competitions. Each performance built on the lessons she had learned, her confidence growing with each stage. She never forgot the moment when she had faced criticism from a renowned maestro and had turned it into a defining moment of courage and skill. That experience became a cornerstone of her philosophy. Talent, while important, was most meaningful when paired with resilience, determination, and an unwavering belief in oneself. The young pianist also made time to mentor other aspiring musicians, sharing her experiences and the lessons she had learned. She encouraged them to embrace challenges, to see criticism as a tool for growth, and to trust in their abilities. Her story resonated with many, inspiring a new generation of musicians to pursue their dreams with courage and passion. She understood that success was not only about personal achievement but also about lifting others and sharing the knowledge and experience she had gained along the way. Looking back, she realized that the journey had been as important as the destination. The pressure, fear, and criticism had shaped her, teaching her resilience and focus. The recognition, applause, and acknowledgement had validated her hard work and talent, but the real triumph was the personal growth she had experienced. She had learned to face fear, embrace challenges, and trust in her abilities, lessons that would guide her throughout her life, both on and off the stage. In the end, the young pianist understood that her journey was never just about performing well or receiving praise. It was about the love for music, the dedication to craft, and the courage to face challenges head-on. She had discovered the power of persistence, the importance of self-belief, and the transformative potential of turning doubt into motivation. Every performance, every practice session, and every challenge she faced became part of a larger story. A story of growth, resilience, and the unyielding pursuit of excellence. As she continued to perform and grow, the memory of that day on live television remained vivid. It was a turning point, a moment that had tested her limits and revealed her true strength. She carried it with her not as a burden but as a source of inspiration, a reminder that courage and dedication could overcome fear and criticism. The young pianist knew that her journey would have many more challenges ahead, but she also knew that she had the tools, the resilience, and the passion to face them. And with every note she played, she shared not just music, but a story of determination, hope, and the beauty of believing in oneself.